Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, your home for all content Lord of the Rings home. Today we have the third installment, the third episode of our Boons and Banes podcast with me and my co-host Torm DK. How are you doing, Torm?
Hello, Swag. Hello, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. I'm doing quite fine now that Gondor is out.
Yeah, we've got a lot to cover in today's show. We're going to talk about bomber changes, all the Marquees stuff, what it looks like to kind of spend money in this game right now. I know you and Jay Randall developed a tool to help look at that. We're going to talk about all the stuff with October, Balin, the Tauna interview. We've got a lot of ground to cover. With that, let me just go ahead and get right into it. I want to talk a little bit about the bomber changes, and I'm just going to quickly summarize them if you haven't seen them already. Basically, coming in the next update, they are changing the Chapter 1 kind of bomber mechanics. The War Guard is getting changed so that he only has one stack of Provoke in Chapter 1. He has two stacks of Provoke in Chapters 2 and 3, but just one stack in Chapter 1, so no more Taunt. The Bomber is being changed to something that is binary rather than just there's a percentage it drops on his side versus your side. So if you get to 5 stacks, it automatically drops the bomb. And the important part there is that when you get him to 5 stacks, he immediately drops the bomb, so this might change the way you play a little bit. And then they're also increasing the speed of some of the characters so that they're all not at that same speed, which I'm pretty sure is 154, something like that. It's the same speed as Dunhar. So they're increasing the Mangler, the Firestarter, and the Skull Crusher. This is still in speed order, by the way. So it's still Shadowseer first, and then it'll be Mangler, Firestarter, Skull Crusher next after that. I know people are worried that they might not be able to use that strat on Chapter 3 now. You're still going to be able to do that. There's still 16 characters that are faster than Shadowseer, so you're going to be fine if you want to do that. What do you think about the bomber changes? Are you a fan?
I would say thank God we're getting it next week.
Yeah,
because I've been very vivid about the Chapter 1 in the past, and yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this.
Yeah, same. I think this is a really good change. I don't think this is it's going to be too easy type situation. I think people are going to be they're not going to be punished for not having specific teams for Chapter 1. I think pretty much all of the teams are going to be able to have some tools to get to at least 5 stacks.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think when I look at my roster, right, because one of my problems is actually right now is that even though I spend a fair chunk of cash on it so far, I'm actually scoring lower than some F2P free-to-play players would actually be right now. And this is because of the roster setup I have. So I'm very much looking forward to see what this change does.
Yep, I think this will get more people into Chapter 2 of the raid and just get more people excited about the raid in general. So big fan of that. But we're just kind of briefly mentioning that. There's a lot of videos already out about the bomber stuff. You can expect that next week sometime with the next update. Let's talk about something that I think has been on at least both of our minds for a little while, and that is the kind of shifting power requirement for finishing the final tiers of the Marquee events, and then, just the Marquee setup in general and how it's changed. Basically, Faramir, Boromir, and Denethor all had wildly different power requirements for completing their last 2 tiers, the one at 3-star and the one at 5-star. And so there's this kind of irregularity there, and some of them are really hard, actually. I don't know what you end up having to do for Denethor, but my impression is that's the one that's like actually very difficult to complete.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I think also when we look at the historical pieces, right? Obviously, the day that Marquee releases, everyone is going full throttle, and a lot of us don't have the patience to sit around and do 20, 30, 50 attempts. But I mean, we've seen people post completing Denethor's event with like 400 power. So from that perspective, I don't think it's too bad actually. But it is true that they seem harder this round than they have been in the past. Especially leaders for also support Marquees. For some reason, support Marquees, they are, I guess they are poorly written in a sense. Because they are probably meant to showcase the various support items that the support leader can do, but in practice, that's not really always what is happening.
Yeah, I think that's pretty true. These are all characters that are from the beta, and so part of me is like, well, maybe it's just they're just holdover Marquees design from when they were in the beta. They didn't have Marquees in the beta, obviously, but that's kind of what they were thinking about. I know they've made a lot of skill changes, even in the Marquee, right? If some of the Marquees use the skills from beta characters, not of the character that is the Marquee itself, but like your teammates and whatnot. So I'm wondering if that's, and we'll get to this, I wonder if that's going to change when they actually release Lord Balin as the first non-beta Marquee. If we're going to kind of see more streamlined Marquee events.
I mean, personally, I would hope so, right? Because if we look at like Beliku as an example, right, her passive was nerfed compared with the beta version, quite significantly actually, and the team suffers for it because they did not get increases in speed to compensate. So definitely, I'm interested. And we can also see Balin's kit seems, knocking it out of the park from a support perspective, right? He's doing a lot of things that would require 2 or 3 characters in per ability, basically, right? So yeah, I think, and just to be clear, I'm actually, I would say, positive on this sort of change in the future, right? We've had a number of Marquees now that has not really moved the needle in any significant way, and I think that is going to be a problem moving forward because we are, as a player base, we are. As a spending player base, I would say we are at a point now where we have what we need, so we need the enticement.
Oh, so you're saying that you want more power creep on the Marquees?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is going to transition us into talking a little bit about the spreadsheet that you and Jay Randall made. But you, on a previous episode, had basically described that you wanted 3 Marquees a month because you wanted, you didn't think 2 Marquees a month was like fast enough character release for people who spend. And now you've gotten your wish. Is that something now that you've gotten your wish, is this something that you enjoy?
I would say, I guess this could be a cautionary tale of wishing, preparing, or be ready for what you wish for, right?
Yeah.
Because, and first off, I want to thank JR immensely for building this, right? I had the idea, but as anyone that knows anyone in the office space, right? I'm basically the employee that doesn't know Excel, that goes bothers a guy that knows Excel. So thank you very much to JR for spending the time on this.
Yep.
And also thank you to LOTR and the other team, the other community members that we pull data from, so we don't have to do a lot of manual stuff ourselves. But basically, what we've done is we want to emulate how much it actually costs to do these refreshes and to do these marquees, and what you get out of it in return, both on a gold and character XP level. So that we can have this general discussion on, well, I mean, we're getting 3 marquees a month. Can we actually then accommodate this with the current resources that we have? And if we can't, well, what is then the cost of trying to catch up?
Right. So it's called the Whalinator. As with most things, I'm going to leave a copy or links to all this stuff in the description below if you want to go check this out. It's a tool for definitely if you spend money just to see what that looks like, or if you don't spend money and you want to see how much money people are spending, especially at the very, very top, this is an easy way to do that. So I actually kind of want to, if you don't mind, I just would like to put in some of the stuff that I've been doing and see where I'm at on my main account.
Yeah, because I think this is a good thing to for everyone to do, right? Because it also supports free to play, right? It's just a matter of how you select the various topics.
Yep.
And definitely, I think the key thing we should talk about is the character XP part versus Marquees, because from a free to play perspective, you are basically needing 10 weeks to do a full team to level 60 as it is right now.
That's insane.
It is in a sense, but I guess the counterpart is that if you're doing several hundreds worth of dollars in the game already, you're not actually going that faster. You're basically going 1.4 characters faster per month, which is of course still it's like 40%. But when you look at the cost for doing that, it is actually quite costly, especially if you want to go even faster because of the exponential piece.
So does that include Marquees, or is that just from doing guild refreshes on like chapter 5, let's say?
So it includes everything. So if you scroll down, there's also a setting for Marquees, and and how if you do tier 5 or tier 6
I see.
reward wise. So we account for everything. You can also see the gold gain and so forth, right? So you can see
Oh, wow.
roughly 11 million gold and roughly 2.5 million character XP.
Yeah, that's actually a lot less than I thought. So character XP really is the main bottleneck at this point.
I mean, yeah, definitely. If from a raid team perspective, right? Because again, if we assume that difficulty 3 is balanced around level 67 stars, then free to play will be busy the next I guess 50 weeks just to get their 5 raiding teams up and running on difficulty 3.
Right. I don't actually know how many 80 nodes I farm and how many 60 nodes I farm. I think it's like 8. It's like 8 to 10 80 nodes because I'm just doing refreshes on the elves right now just to make sure I'm prepared for a 7-star Elrond. But it actually made a lot of difference that I didn't realize, right? So sometimes, at least on my main account, I kind of shift between Mithril 1 and Mithril 2, depending on if I have time to climb Arena that day. But it actually, it's a difference of about $1. But what's crazy to me is when I did this and I realized I was spending around $10 a day on this game. And that's not including Marquees. That's just simply from doing gem refreshes. And then you, of course, add Marquees in there. By the way, if this is a little bit confusing to you, the periods are commas. This is kind of it says it right here. It's formatted using European style numbers. So just switch them in your head. It's pretty easy to pick up. But the raids are a big help, obviously, if you put that stuff in. But then, yeah, doing a marquee, especially if you do 3 marquees, you're going to end up spending $340 on average, right?
Yes,
Man.
and in practice you would probably be doing more, right? Because show me the whale that only does $50 worth of gems, right? That doesn't happen. We buy the $100 pack every time because it's best value.
Yep. So that it's kind of a lot of money going into upkeeping these accounts every month. And one thing we wanted to talk about, and I'll bring up I'll just leave it like this. But one thing we wanted to talk about was kind of, were these marquees worth it? Because they started doing these offers where they're actually giving the epic ability materials in here. And actually, what I thought for a very reasonable price, right? $25 for 50 epic ability materials, plus some other stuff, 150 purple mats is nothing to sneeze at either. This seemed very reasonably priced to me. But when we saw this, you and I had a little bit of a conversation. We're like, well, why are they devaluing the marquees? And then, of course, we realize just a little bit later that when you get one of these marquee characters to gear 3, they give you this offer, right? $100 offer that comes with some gear pieces. This isn't taking you to gear 8, but also 1 million gold. And I think a lot of people buy these, but like you mentioned, or not like you mentioned, but as you've mentioned, this doesn't have the thing that people really need, which is the character XP.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and to be fair, right? I've coined the term, the pack of shame, because this is basically what it is. It will for people like you and I that only do 5-star marquees, it basically doubles the cost of the marquee. So while we do actually probably need the light crystals if you're taking them to gear 8, and of course the gold is nice, but I mean, the cost per marquee goes up significantly if you do these offers. Which again, I talked about this in the last episode, right, where I said maybe we'll get a whale squeeze for September because it's end of quarter, and definitely the squeeze is on that there can be no discussion on this. And it is actually very interesting to see that they are actually devaluing their own marquees in that sense.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not even just I guess it's not even a squeeze, though, in my opinion, because I think this is just going to be the norm moving forward. So it's not really an end of quarter squeeze, I should say, because, yeah, it's just going to be the offer you get every time we do one of these marquee characters now. Do you think, now that you've built the Whalinator and seen the crunch, really gone in depth and seen how much of a crunch the character XP is, do you think that the 250k XP that you get from completing the last tier of the marquee is more valuable than definitely the epic ability materials?
I mean, the pricing of the offers show us that it is, right? Because now we can get 50, or at least as a one-time thing, right? We've gotten 50 epic materials for $25.
Yeah.
So definitely it is. And that's actually why I'm very curious on why they're doing this. Yeah, I mean,
It's very
the,
strange.
yeah, it is, and the Whalinator is actually meant to showcase the standard, right? Because this is a level setting tool, basically, right? It tells you roughly if you do X, Y, Z, then you will have this amount to play with, right? And you can of course choose to not upgrade the Marquees, right? I don't upgrade every Marquee because A, we don't have the resources, and B, I don't really have the inclination to do so. Not at this time, at least. But either way, I mean, it will show us roughly how fast we can go. And obviously, if you're an Uber Kraken like the very top actually is, right? I mean, the cost to go that fast ramps up significantly, right? Because you have to remember that if you do 7-star Marquees and you do this offer on top, then Gondor would have cost you almost $1,800, and it's not even a legendary unlock or anything, right? It's just the plain old Marquees. So yeah, the cost is ramping up quite heavily, and this is also the thing we talked about in the end of the last episode, right? Where a significant amount of the revenue from this game comes from the very few. And we just have to keep that in mind, that all these offers that are coming up, they're not meant for you and I as such, right? Or even those that spend less than us. We are not even the target audience, so don't worry about it. Just ignore them, move forward.
It's interesting. You do have to pay so much more to gain those extra little bits at the kind of top end. I'm wondering if there's some sort of metric or way that we can essentially determine what is like an optimal spending, like where are you getting the biggest returns on investment, and then after that, if you spend $1 more, does it kind of just start to fall off in terms of account progression and character progression? That's something I'm curious about. I'm not sure we have that built in here, but that's just something now that we've talked about it, I'm kind of wondering about.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it would probably be something we could put on the to-do list, because I agree with that sentiment, right? It comes around, we proclaim ourselves orcas, even though I guess the math shows us that we're not, right? But we have the desire to go to the level that is being showed here, um, and that will take effort, because we've done differently in the past, and thus we have the habit of doing so. And that is actually what we are finding right. That is at least what I'm finding right now. Right, I've built up habits. These 150 days we've played this game, because today is actually the 150th
Yep.
day this game has been live since LTL release. And my math shows I'm doing roughly $32 a day on
Wow.
average. So that is, and to your point, right? I've started wondering, what does this massive amount of money actually get me? And the truth of the matter is, the Whalinator shows this quite clearly. Not a whole lot. So why would we keep doing it? And that is actually, I guess, the question to CG, maybe Nick as the lead director, right? Why would we keep doing this? Because the advantage is not that great.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something to be said. I think I'm a little bit of differing opinion than you here. I think there is something to be said to maintaining game balance and not having kind of a pay to win type situation. But like a lot of these things, a lot of things in these types of games is you have to strike a very delicate balance, and it's really hard to do. So I'm probably okay with what advantages my spending has given me. I'm in a guild where I'm mostly amongst free to play players or very, very light spenders. And I definitely feel that I have a significant advantage over them in terms of definitely raid scoring, not necessarily arena, but mostly in arena as well. So I think I do have advantages in pretty much all the game modes we have right now. I don't know. It doesn't seem optimal, if that makes sense. One thing I kind of want to go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, regarding arena specifically, that we also have to remember that we are actually in the, I would say, later stages of the Elrond meta. Meaning, whenever he comes back, free to play will potentially even get him at 6-star. The rest of us will probably have farmed him to 7-star. So from that point onward, the arena will be super stale, right? So we need the next set of, could be the Witch King, could be something else. For me, that doesn't really matter. But either way, the arena meta needs to be shaped up somehow. or shaken up somehow. And I don't think they have the luxury of waiting until they're ready with the multi-squad PvP.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. One thing I want to circle back to, though, is talking about these epic ability materials. And I believe I mentioned it on the last episode, but I want to say it again on this episode, is that when Elrond comes back around, whenever that is going to be, we'll talk about that in a little bit here, but there needs to be a consistent, even if it's slow, there needs to be a consistent way for free-to-play players to be able to acquire these epic ability materials, because I think Elrond's leadership is probably one that you want to upgrade. The Rivendell Elves are a great squad. You should be pursuing them. They are terrific in raids. They're going to be terrific in all 4 chapters of the raid, I imagine. Definitely the first 3. And so there needs to be a way for free-to-play to access that level of power. And I'm hoping that comes around when Elrond returns, whether that's through some sort of new guild chapter or some new campaign events, or putting it in a store that is not for mithril raid coins, which are unobtainable for free-to-play players at the moment. So I just want to say that before we kind of transition into our next topic here, which is Gondor. So tell us a little bit about what you did for your Gondor squad.
So what I did was spend a lot of money and a lot of golden energy on getting them up so I could showcase them. I would actually say that they perform as advertised, which was actually the thing I built them to actually see if they did. I was a little afraid they would be another Haradrim in that sense, but so far that does not seem to be the case. They perform as expected. I think I managed to score like 580k on these 4 and 5 star characters. So I'm okay with that actually. See my Herendril there gets hammered because he's only like level 44 or something like that at the time. But I actually think they perform as advertised for chapter 3 specifically. I guess the wider problem is though that I don't think they will perform well in chapter 1 and 2. So from that perspective, if we ask are they worth the whale, then the answer is probably not.
I have a question for you then. I didn't buy them on my main account. We've actually done this thing where it seems like you buy the Marquees 1 month and I don't, and then I buy the Marquees 1 month and you don't, which is a good system for this podcast specifically, I guess. But I was considering building up a small Gondor team on my free-to-play account where I have 3 stars, put them at like level 40, gear tier, I don't know, 5 or 6. Do you think that is something that is worthwhile investing in for free-to-play players or light spenders?
Not for 1 chapter, no. Free-to-play players do not have the character XP to actually do this. Not at this stage anyway. So I would not recommend that.
Okay.
I think once you can actually farm, all the characters. So in a couple of months' time, I think they will be worthwhile to do generally because hopefully we'll have some power creep that will let them perform better. I'm actually going to experiment with putting in helper chat instead of Herandril, just to give them some more sustain. And I'll also consider just dropping in Balin whenever we get to him, because that is Gondor's problem, right? They cannot keep up with the input, the damage that is being output. Just from Denethor's passive region.
Yeah, when the kit reveals came out, I immediately thought this seems like we're missing something. The team itself doesn't actually have a healer, does it?
No, you only have Denethor's passive regions.
And he's technically considered a support, right?
Yeah. So he and even then they actually capped how many regions he can give out at 3. Which is another odd decision in my mind. I don't understand why they would do that.
Yeah, that is strange.
But yeah, I mean they do not have the sustain to keep up. But for chapter 3 specifically, they work very well since they can easily get immunity, and immunity just lets the orcs hammer on.
Yeah, I think if you really beef up Boromir, it seems like you can do decently well once he gets that immunity going. But like you said, yeah, they just need some more sustain. When I read the kits, I thought, okay, this doesn't seem like it will last very long, but it seems like they get the job done at least. That's good to know about the small baby Gondor teams. I had currently been shifting my focus on my free-to-play account to essentially just preparing for Elrond, making sure I get 5 stars there, but I think I'm going to stop farming Aura and Herendil to 3 stars because, yeah, maybe you're right. They don't have the payoff that other teams do in the other chapters. Like, I know Haradrim isn't your favorite, and you don't think that they did as advertised for Chapter 2, but I do think they're generally a pretty good team in the raids, and they do put up decent scores for most chapters of the raids. And I think in that sense, they are better than Gondor. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And the feedback we've gotten from the Krakens that actually have the Marquees at 7-star is that Haradrim remains a top 3 team across all chapters. So that is, I would say that is positive enough. I would just say personally, as I stated last time, they did not perform as I would have expected, but they will at 7 stars apparently. So that is very nice.
That's good to know.
And of course, we would hopefully have Chibeb and Beleko available to farm somewhat soon. I know we're waiting for Legolas and Gimli first, but I mean, hopefully we'll see that next week. So
yeah, I'm hoping that's what is part of the patch next week as well. Talking about Gondor, let's kind of just generally talk about Chapter 3 of the raid in general and kind of our thoughts on that. How do you feel about Chapter 3 of the raid?
So I actually found the so of course the cheese method is what it is, right? I found it very interesting that due to the way that the scoring works, but I'm okay with that. I think from a mechanics perspective, I actually quite like it. It does showcase that a number of teams do not have a cleanser, which makes them poor for Chapter 3. You know, Isengard and all these other teams, right? You can do some stuff where you try and funnel across with Oglok, etc. But any team that does not have a cleanser is basically not going to do that well. Or well, a cleanser or immunity, which seems to be the key for Chapter 3 specifically.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how much these raids specifically really require some sort of bane removal and some sort of sustain. When the raids first got launched, I was like, wow, we're gonna need some healers. And then every subsequent chapter, I've been like, they really want you to level up healers and like support characters that can cleanse. Like, this is insane how much they want that. I'm kind of in a situation on my main account where I'm probably the only, like one of the only people who has this, where I have Bekaloo and T-Beb actually leveled up, and then none of the other 3 Haradrim. So I've kind of given myself 2 free cleansers and 1 healer on accident, really. It's kind of interesting, but Naramiri, obviously very good in the raids. Pippin, pretty good in the raids. One thing I want to talk about a little bit, though, is I thought Nuraz was going to be really good in Chapter 3 specifically, and I did some play testing last week, and that didn't necessarily seem to be the case. The run I submitted with him ended up being one where I was using him on a Rohan squad, and I kind of had this double summon strat to kind of maximize points there, but he was a little bit too squishy. So I didn't release a video on it because I still want to do a little bit more testing, but he's not the support character like Naramiri is, where you can chuck in Naramiri at like gear 5, level 45, and it just makes things flow a lot better. I'm also a very, very big fan of Chapter 3 of the raid. I think it's awesome that they included a mechanics type situation where you're not just focusing on killing orcs, but instead focusing on survival, and you're I would say encouraged to break up the teams that you were using in chapters 1 and 2 and mix and match and find something that works. And that's actually why I kind of think it's okay that there's this cheese method, which, if you don't know, essentially you should be doing all of your runs on difficulty 3. But if you have characters that are faster than the Shadowseer, of which there are 16, then you can put them on a team even if they're just level 1, gear 1, and instantly get 90k points. And so even if you have to break up your Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 teams because you don't have enough sustain to go around, you can still get some easy points this way. I'm a big fan. I'm excited to see what Chapter 4 brings, but I think this rollout of this chapter was actually pretty good and pretty well received. I don't know many people who despise it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think mechanics-wise, it's actually fun. Definitely, it's much more fun than Chapter 1 at this stage, right? But hopefully that will change next week. It also, I guess, foreshadows a little of what we can expect for Chapter 4 now that we've seen Balin's kit. So once we get to that, because that probably will further emphasize the need for support characters.
Yeah, let's actually transition here into talking about October. So this really, I think it caught a lot of people by surprise. It definitely caught me by surprise. The month of October is not going to be shadow characters. It's not going to be Nazgul. It's not going to be a team to go with the Witch King. It is instead their first Shattered Timeline what if character. And so we're going to get 3 Marquees, another 3 Marquee month. And those Marquees, of course, are going to be Lord Balin. And then the 2 elves, the 2 Sylvan brothers who are not Hildir, are going to be joining us. And this is kind of the Shattered Timeline where, of course, the dwarves passed through Lorien. They helped the elves repel orcs on their borders. And then in kind, the elves helped the dwarves reclaim Moria. And then it was a success where Lord Balin does not indeed die, but is able to successfully reclaim Moria and become the king of Moria. I'm a bit shocked at how this kind of turned out, but I'm actually a big fan of 1, their character design, and 2, his kit. But let's talk about what this kind of means logistically for both Elrond's return and when we should expect the Witch King. Where are you at now on that? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I guess they listen to our podcast, right, and thus can ruin our our predictions. I would say that well, I guess the longer they wait for Elrond, the less FOMO they can create, and thus the less squeeze they can do. So maybe they aren't really interested in that. I think the kids look interesting from Balin's side. Definitely, that is very interesting what he can do there. He's mechanically a power creep character, so thumbs up for that. I will be looking forward to seeing, especially the elf brother with the shield, because he looks pretty nice. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what they come up with there. Elrond, though, I will still peg in October, simply because whenever we get Elden's Marquee event returning, that's probably the sign. I think someone did a calculation from last time where there was 11 days from the end of Elden's Marquee to the restart of or for the start of Elrond. So it will probably be middle of October, I guess.
Okay, I'm with you on that. It's probably in October sometime. I'm not going to refuse to narrow it down to early or late October because, as we've seen, my prediction skills are pretty hit or miss. And I am kind of the opinion that they're not going to rerun the Eladin Marquee. They never said they were going to. They've made no indication of it so far. I am not convinced that that's going to happen. I don't know what that means. I think they're probably going to get some backlash for that. But they kind of put themselves in that situation by rerunning the Arwen Marquee, which, to be fair, and to give them credit, was an incredible thing for them to do, actually. They don't do that normally, right? They don't rerun Marquees. They've previously said, we don't really intend on rerunning Marquees. So to see them do that with the first Marquee, just to make sure people are kind of caught up, is really good. And then one of the things they mentioned, Nick Reinhardt mentioned in Tauna's interview, was that they're thinking about these systems to actually have these Marquees come back on a timely basis. And he didn't go into details on that because I think it's something they're going to do probably down the line. But it's something they're thinking about, which I actually think is really, really good and important for growing your character base and maintaining your character base. But yeah, Torm, I'm not convinced that Eladin's going to come back, at least not before Elrond.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess you are on that side of the fence. Then I fully expect them to, and the reason I expect them to is simply because of the RMA happening on Monday, or the AMA, sorry. Because potentially we stand to gain a lot of new players in a very short time if this is a success, and hopefully it is. I generally hope that, because right now we are under 10 people an hour that joined Shard 12. So definitely we could use the boost. But yeah, I think actually they will. And I actually think they will also rerun Arwen if it is a huge success. Simply because in order to get these new people invested, there's no problem in throwing however many Marquees at them at a time if it's 3 characters. You know, level 30 takes what, 4, 5, 6 days to get to. So
Less than
definitely, it would definitely make sense just to do it. Even if they don't purchase anything, it's just a matter of getting the characters up and running and seeing what they can do.
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't aware, they're doing a Reddit Ask Me Anything from 9 to 11 a.m. Pacific time. It is not on the Lord of the Rings home subreddit. It is on the R Fantasy. So it is on the fantasy subreddit. And to me, this seems like an approach that they're taking where they kind of want to cast a wide net and see if they can draw people in. I had actually not considered that, Torn, that they might rerun Eladin's Marquee simply because they are trying to get so many new players coming into the game with stuff like this. So that's actually a good point. That might have convinced me that maybe they will run the Eladin Marquee. If they do, I do think they should also rerun the Gimli and Legolas Marquee, because that's pretty low stakes in terms of upsetting any sort of balance in the game at the moment, right? There's not really a fellowship team to speak of, and they're kind of just characters you use, kind of plug and play into different types of squads. And that might change with Lord Balin, I don't know, but it would seem, well, it wouldn't change because they would also kind of plug and play in there. So that's actually pretty interesting that you say that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But
yeah, plus I mean Legolas and Gimli have the star factor, right? Because
exactly.
they are known from the movies, and so definitely it would make sense to rerun all the Marquees in that sense.
Yeah, okay.
There's no downside for CG, right? They already got our money for the 5-star event, so yeah, of course
It's interesting.
These new fantasy people may have money as well, but yeah, I mean they can pick up the Balin Marquee then.
Yeah, so that starts the beginning of October here. We think Elrond's probably going to come back sometime in October. Where are you at on Witch King? Where do you think the Witch King's going to come?
3 weeks after Elrond.
3 weeks after Elrond. Why is that?
So because it has to, in my mind, it has to do with timing, and as I said, the staleness of the arena meta, right? So he should be there just after Elrond, so that everyone, the free to play can unlock them, and the whales can get Elrond 7-star, and then they can understand just how stale the arena meta actually is, and then they will start roughly complaining about it 2 weeks after. So it makes sense to do a drop there to get everyone on board. I guess I think this is actually going to be the event where we really see or at least I'm sort of hoping that we would see it at least, right? Because the Marquee team to build Witch King up, 4 Marquees, it's going to cost a lot of money. So that would probably be a make or break situation, right? Because if the team is not seen as worth it, and you have people that have blown $1,500 on it, that's probably going to leave a mark, I think. So definitely it would be a make or break moment for me.
I'm really torn, because I actually think it should become faster after Elrond's return, for the reason that you stated, just so that the people who spend a lot of money now have the edge against people who just got there. Elrons, or people who, are in shards that didn't originally get Elrons, can get their Elrons, and then if they are whales in those shards, they can spend more money to get the Witch King. So I think it should be coming pretty soon after Elrond finishes rerunning, but we don't have a team. It doesn't, we know that the Witch King's probably going to be run with Nazgul. Is he going to be running with some other team in the meantime? I don't know. And I don't see where he kind of fits in this squad. I'm really not sure.
Yeah, so what I would sort of expect is that I think it was the tank, isn't he called the Beast from the East or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice name. Apart from that, but I mean, he was data mined originally to have a Sam adventure type, right?
Yep.
So I would not consider him like a Marquee, but I would actually consider him dropping the same months that the Witch King would, and then you could have 3 Marquees on top of that. So
right.
You had the full team in 1 month.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the way forward. I mean, and if CG wanted to be very hideous to us, they would either require, Gondor or something similar, all these new shattered characters to actually unlock Beast from the East. That would definitely cause a squeeze of magnitudes that would make EA stockholders very happy, I think. So definitely the potential is there. But I mean, it's a fine point, right? It's a double-edged sword, because if they don't perform as expected, the outrage would be incredible to watch. I would hope there was enough popcorn to enjoy that point, because I mean, people would blow up.
Yeah, I think that's pretty true. It's going to be, well, there's going to be this sort of, I think the Witch King, looking at his beta kit, has some tools that are pretty anti-Elrond, right? He can prevent revives, which is massive. If you just burst down Eladin and you can prevent him from reviving, then one, you kind of waste Elrond's turn. It's not really, it's still healing everybody else, but you've essentially eliminated a big annoying part of that team. Really, if you can prevent the revive from anybody with that Morgul, Poison, Bane. So I think it's going to be a PvP focused team, and I think it's going to be one that is meant specifically to counter Elrond. What I'm kind of curious about is how well they're going to perform in raids as well. Yes, I enjoy the PvP aspect of it. And yes, I will probably end up getting him because he's a legendary character and you kind of need that if you want to keep up. But I'm not super interested in, putting resources into a team that maybe doesn't perform super well in any chapter of the raid. So I'm curious about that. Are you thinking November?
Yeah, I think that would probably be a good thing to do, either in November or as part of this December rush in case they have additional shattered characters just to round out Balin's team,
I see.
or even the Fellowship, right? I think I don't think it's a good idea for CG to have these 3-man teams around for too long. Still, I mean, the same thing with the Dunland, right? They still need 2 Marquees as well to round out that team. Obviously, the sooner, from my perspective, right, but I also come from Marvel Strike Force. So in Marvel Strike Force, it's basically the full team or nothing, right? They are meant to synergize very well as a singular team. There's not so much theory crafting. Whereas I know in Star Wars, people like their theory crafting quite a bit, and they aren't so strict on it.
Yep.
But I think the sooner they can get into a full team mode, the better actually for the game overall. Obviously, some theory crafting would be okay, but I don't think they should be leaving the teams hanging like they have been in this sense.
Yeah, you're right in that there's a difference between MSF and Swigo like that. I do prefer the Swigo method. I prefer being able to stick different characters together to solve different types of mechanics, puzzles that we get in the game, and that's why I actually one of the reasons why I really like Chapter 3 so much. But I'm kind of the opinion that it's going to be November too. I've been bouncing back and forth about who the unlock requirements for the Witch King are going to be. And I was like, for a while, I was like, the data mine is so old. I'm just really not sure that Haradrim are going to be it. Now I'm kind of leaning back towards Haradrim being the unlock requirement. I'm not sure Gondor makes that much sense to unlock the Witch King. Maybe I just don't have the lore depth of knowledge, kind of understand that. Haradrim, at least in my mind, makes a little bit more sense. But I'm very confused as to where they're going to be how we're going to be unlocking rather the Witch King. Are you on the Gondor or the Haradrim side of things?
I am as ever the cynical commercial guy, right? So I think the train station, or the train has left the station for Haradrim, right? They are almost at a stage where we would expect them on nodes. So that FOMO moment has passed, right? Gondor has not seen that great of a reception, probably. At least that's not my opinion, or that's at least not my impression from people chatting about it, right? I'm one of the few that has actually dedicated the resources to do it. So from a commercial perspective, to me that makes more sense. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge lore buff, right? So I would shrug my shoulders and probably not care too much which team unlocks it, as long as we had the chance to get ready for it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, I suppose, as well. Speaking of not being a lore buff, let's talk a little bit. I specifically really want to talk a little bit about Lord Balin, and I know you're excited about him too, but I think this is a really great character. I'm very excited for his kit. I know I see a lot of people who are actually big dwarf people who are not happy about Lord Balin, and they don't think he's worth it. They don't think he fits into a specific squad. And I think most of that comes from the fact that his passive ability down here has this part where you need Rumil and Orphan. So you have to kind of play him with these other two shattered timeline characters. I think what gets left out though is that there's still, even if you do slot him into a full dwarf team, there's this little tagline right here where he gets 5% turn meter per Bane, which is massive. I don't know how that's going to play out in, say, a multi-squad PvP type scenario, but just in Chapter 3 alone, this is pretty big, right? It gives you Balin, I'm going to keep messing that up, Balin the chance to kind of get his turn out, and then he's got a 3-turn cleanse that gives regeneration, which is nuts. 2 regeneration, and it cleanses 2 Banes. And that at 3 turns, when you get it to max rank, that's insane. Plus his basic also just cleanses a random Bane from one squad member. So getting him to go all the time is going to be massive. And his passive is pretty good at doing that. I'm very excited to play with him. I'm going to try him with Gimli and Legolas first, and then him and all the elves when that full team is out. At the start, though, I think I'm still going to use Bifur lead, and then I'm just going to slot him in either for Brute or Gimli. I'm not entirely sure yet. I'm probably just going to try both. I think this is the answer that the dwarf team needs, because in chapters 1 through 3, what you're really lacking is the ability to cleanse off those Banes. So I was trying to use Nuraz with my dwarf team just to see if I could, his special one could do enough to kind of cleanse all the Banes, and it really didn't do a whole lot. Instead, I'm going to be able to do it with an actual dwarf, which is really exciting for me. I know you were thinking about just kind of using him as a plug and play character. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, as we said earlier in this podcast, right? I think his special 2 is what 2 or 3 characters combined, because it does so many things. So I actually think I would probably plug him into Gondor just to see how he would do there, because they're already regeneration based, and they sort of are supposed to block a lot. You would still go from 50% block to 40%, just losing one Gondor member, and Boromir would still have 55% chance to block, so that is not too bad. So yeah, I think that's what I will probably get him up, but I mean I have I have no character XP, I have no light crystals, so I guess it's a pack of shame or something that will help accelerate this.
I have to start saving quite a bit. People are also wondering why he's got this fatal blow type situation thing in his kit, and because he's not a tank. We don't know the kits for the other 2 elves, so we don't know if they maybe pass around some sort of taunt or provoke or something like that. We also don't know what chapter 4 is about, but if Lord Balin does happen to get, let's say, marked and captured in chapter 3, I think this is a great mechanic to kind of eke out a bunch more points, right? Because he's going to get to go, he's going to heal, he's going to be able to basically survive. It'll be interesting to see if this completely cleanses all of his debuffs. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but he's also granting 100% turn meter to the 2 elves, so that's automatically 2 turns that they get to go, and maybe they have some more support based skills in their kit that would kind of let them revive Lord Balin. I'm very excited about that. And then the last thing I want to talk about for Lord Balin is his leader ability here, and that, he's giving Eagle Eye to dwarves, which I think is very interesting. And when elves get a Bane, they get protection. So he's handing out Eagle Eye and protection. And he's also getting a bunch of armor. And if we go to Gandalf's kit, I've talked about this in a previous video, but his special 1 right here, he grants Eagle Eye and he grants protection to fellowship members. And protection is not like defensive, it's just an increase in armor. So I think this is more of a chapter 4 type ability here. And I think this means that there's going to be a stage of the Balrog where it's going to be really hard to hit him. You either need Eagle Eye, or you're going to be missing a bunch, or because he dodges. I'm not entirely sure. He's got a bunch of nimbles maybe in his shadow mode, but it's also interesting because you have to have all this armor. So I'm wondering if when he's in his fire mode, he just hits really hard and you need to be able to reduce all of that with an armor kind of boost, because he's also got a plus 20% armor here in the maxed ability upgrade. So I think this is clues for chapter 4. They didn't hard sell Lord Balin as a chapter 4 solve, right? It's not a full team, but it says here, when the brothers Rumil and Orphan Jord Lord Balin, he will survive 1 fatal blow. If the brothers are alive, use this to your advantage in chapter 4 of the Mines of Moria raid. So I think that's very, very interesting. It can also be effective against enemies that apply blind. So maybe the Balrog applies blind or has nimble or whatever. It's giving us hints about chapter 4. I'm very excited for Lord Balin. Any final thoughts you have on him?
Yeah, I would say that definitely he is marked for greatness in chapter 4. I would be very surprised if the fire mode that we've seen from the Balrog does not apply burn, and I would be very surprised if the shadow mode for the Balrog does not apply blind, because that's basically what he's protecting against, right? So definitely will be interesting to see. But yeah, I think overall as a kid, I appreciate his kit. I appreciate the potential power creep we get as a character like this. He seems strong for what he is.
Yep, I agree. I'm not sure I buy into the doubt from the other dwarf chads, but that's fine. I can basically be the one to go and level him up and showcase him, and maybe that will convince some people that he is a useful dwarf to include in your dwarf squad. We'll see. Let's change gears here and talk about something I think was really, really great and good for the game, and is definitely worth spending a chunk of time discussing, and we've already done it this podcast at different points, is this developer interview that Tauna did with the game producer Nick Reinhardt. If you haven't seen it, I will of course leave a link down below. It's an hour long if you have the time for that. There are multiple videos, one for, I did one, Tauna did one. They kind of do a summary, like if you don't have an hour, but definitely worth your time to go and check out what was said in here, because there's lots and lots of details. This is what I really liked about it. They set up this interview as a way to reach out, and then they did not be like, well, I can't really answer that question. Oh, I can't really answer that question. He actually gave us lots of details on many different things. It felt substantial. And so I'm a big fan of that. And we talked about this on the last podcast, because our bane for both of us was communication. And so we also said on the last podcast, you have to give credit where credit is due. And so I think the communication has greatly been increased since they released that Journey Ahead. This is one element of that. They're doing the AMA. CG Heem has been very proactive on Discord and giving more concrete information, I would say, and specific details on things. So it seems like they've maybe lightened the restrictions on things that she is allowed to say. I'm a big fan of the way that they're kind of progressing on their communication front. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. As I said on episode 2, right? Credit where credit is due. I'm very glad they. I think we should just take the credit for it. Say they listened to us. They of course did what we asked them to do, right? So this is very nice, right? I was very pleased to see the way they released Gondor, the info for Gondor, right? They had an exclusive for YouTube. I didn't know, but they basically gave the full team the kits for the full team before the team was available. And definitely that is something I hope they will keep up with, because it helps drive a lot of decisions. The community can start all sorts of theory crafting. So definitely they should do that whenever possible. Definitely they should.
I know that's the plan.
Been more active as well. So definitely that is, and especially this interview with Nick. He seems actually very good on camera. So I hope he will do this more regularly as well, because they have a lot of knowledge that they in my opinion at least should be sharing with us as players. Even some of the mechanical stuff, right? Where typically that is not something they seem to be that interested in. But I mean, this is a production grade product, so the math behind all the systems should be readily available for us to help troubleshoot if something is wrong even. But yeah, I mean, they stepped up the communication. Thumbs up for that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I totally agree with you. He is very, very good on camera. He's definitely honed his skill set for hyping up the game. He comes off as very authentically interested and passionate about the game that he is the game director of. And I think he actually is. I don't think it's like a facade or anything like that. I think he is cares a lot and cares deeply about this game, and it's very exciting to see, and it comes off well. You can tell that he cares a lot. So I'm a big fan of that, but there are a few things in the interview that I want to specifically talk about that he mentions, and the first one is glyphs, and that they will have speed, and the second one is multi-squad PvP. So the next progression system is going to be glyphs. It's going to be like a mod system, right? Instead of having just flat stat increases, though, for the set bonuses, we're going to get something functional. I'm a big fan of that. They're going to try and make speed not a runaway stat. And then the second thing is multi-squad PvP, which is slated to come either, I think, later this year or early next year, and that will be replacing Arena. So you will have a GAC type mode every day, but it will be replacing just the single, squad Arena. So all of your gem income will go to that, which means that there's going to be a league system as opposed to shards, which I am a big fan of as well. But let's kind of circle back and talk specifically about speed. I know you are not a fan of them including speed on the glyph system here. I've got the speed of all the characters here. What I did was, let me see, you probably can't see that very well. Let me slide it over this way. What I've done here is I've essentially plotted all of the characters, what speeds they have, and how many characters have that speed. So you can kind of see where all of the speed is concentrated, if that makes sense. You can see that there are actually a number of gaps, both at the high end of the speed range and at the low end of the speed range. So not a lot of very slow characters, not a lot of very fast characters. It's kind of densely populated in the middle here, or more densely populated kind of in the middle of the speed range, which is honestly what you want. Probably you kind of want like a normal looking distribution for speed ranges. Seems to be pegged at about 150, kind of where we're at. Why don't you like having speed for glyphs?
Well, I actually think the thing you made there shows why it is a bad idea. Because if we assume, I know in Star Wars you could get like 150 speed or something crazy like that, but even if we say it caps out at 15, right? The jump from the middle of the layer, right, 150 as you say, to 15 is actually a number of characters. I think that's going to hurt more than it will help. I mean, I understand the desire, I understand the commercial impact as well, because this is 100% a commercial impact thing. Obviously, they want us to spend a lot of money on RNG items, so definitely this is a commercial thing. But I think it will have a large impact, right? Because I can't really see a situation where you wouldn't build for speed, which is, I guess, is my key concern on the whole speed thing. Right? Why wouldn't you build for it? The bonuses from the other things, lambas or whatever they want to call it, right? They would have to be massive in order for to not build speed, because speed also means you will get more subsequent turn, so the whole action economy is turned upside down.
Well, there aren't very many taunts in the game, and I think taunts are very powerful at the moment. And if you have a character who can kind of funnel all the damage and take all that damage, especially if you give them a set or like, mods that just vastly increase health or armor or things like that, then I think then it's worth it, because you can just put the set on them, right, that gets them some turn meter. At the start, they could get their taunt out, and then they're slow. They're super slow, so it's really hard to get around their taunt unless they've got, the other team has some sort of Bane removal, which is not that common either. So I think that's a situation. But yeah, I think for a lot of characters, you are going to probably just want to have speed, at least as something. Definitely is like that primary stat in that where you can put it. As a secondary stat, maybe it's not as impactful because the values are so low. I'm not really sure. But I mentioned this before, there's so many things with these types of games that you have to strike a delicate balance, because in the interview, what Nick Reinhardt said was he wants you to be able to customize the turn order of your characters, but he doesn't want it to be a runaway stat. If you are only going for speed on all of your characters, in my mind, that means it's a runaway stat. So you have to balance the gains you could get with speed with the other stats that you could get. Maybe you increase the amount of health you get from these mods, these glyphs rather, or you increase the amount of armor or attack or whatever. And so then maybe it becomes worth it. Okay, yeah, I don't go as fast, but if I have some sort of attack set, I don't need to go as fast because I do insane damage, more DPS anyway. So I think that's kind of a way they can balance it. It's gonna be really hard to hit the mark here, in my opinion.
I think it will depend a lot on how the stats they will give for the other stats will actually work.
Yep.
Like, are they going to give percentages, or are they going to give flat stats bonuses, right? But I would argue even if it caps at 15 speed as an example, right? So you would have 18 speed then, I guess. Six thingies with 3 speed each. Even then, I mean, 18 speed versus, let's say, 15,000 hit points, right? 15,000 hit points right now in this game is roughly 25% of a fully start Helberod.
Yeah,
it is a lot, right? So
yeah.
So I still wouldn't do that trade, right? Because 18 speed is a lot. So I mean, to me, the stat bonuses would have to be even larger than that. Which I guess maybe is going to be the case, because we can see in chapter 3 of the raid for difficulty 4, right? The very first AoE that happens hits for like 50k.
Yeah.
So there's maybe like 5 characters in the game right now that could handle a hit like that.
Yep.
So maybe that is the plan, right?
Yeah, it could be. I'm very interested to see what they show us. I could be wrong here, and so if you know, please feel free to correct me in the comments here. But when mods were initially released in Swigo, they were out of control, and they basically had to rein things back in. They had, plus 100 whatever speed, and it was like, this is insane. Why would you do this? They reined it back in a little bit, but speed is definitely still the runaway stat that it is in Swigo. One thing I'm not sure about, though, is how effectively they were able to monetize mods. Because at least when I was playing, I was basically never tempted to buy mods. It basically just acted as another sink for people who were spending money on the game and for gems, for premium currency, right? Getting mod energy. I do think they sold some sort of mod related packs, but I'm not entirely sure that it was like super well monetized and streamlined like they have the marquee characters, which kind of means two possibilities. They're going to kind of copy that same sort of system from Swigo, and it's not going to be super heavily monetized. Maybe they feel it would be too pay to win to super heavily monetize it like that. Or two, they learn from how they rolled it out in Swigo, and it will be pretty well monetized and will act as another sort of tool for people who spend lots and lots of money on this game to drive a gap between them and the next person who spends a little bit less than them, right? I'm curious how that's going to play out.
Yeah, definitely. I think what we see in the data mines is that it has its own energy type. So definitely it will be interesting to see how much an energy refresher of for mods or glyphs will actually cost, because that's something we can easily calculate then in the Whalinator to understand just how much extra is this expected to be.
Yeah,
just as a baseline.
There's a big difference too if it's just copies the guild energy structure where it's 3 100s and 2 200s. That's massively different than if it's 3 50s, 3 100s, like the regular energy. Yeah, that's gonna be a big role. They're really kind of once you get into the game, they're doing the thing that all these games do is you kind of buy into the sunken cost fallacy, and then they kind of sink their teeth into you a little bit more. Here's another way that we're going to get you to spend money, and if you don't, well, you're going to fall behind. That's why I really applaud free-to-play players, to be honest, because they are able to, a lot of them, especially the very competitive ones, some of whom are in my guild, I'm continuously impressed by their ability to navigate this game so effectively and really play really competitively at a high level, at least in Arena, for not spending really any money or just a little bit of money on this game. So very impressed by that. And that really leads me into the second thing I want to talk about here, which is the multi-squad PvP feature. I'm very excited for it. Are you excited for it, or do you care at all about this GAC type mode?
I've never been a big fan of PvP as such, right? It's fun enough to whale at for single team PvP, but in Marvel Strike Force, an example, I'm not a big fan of the war type, which is the guild versus guild, or the Crucible, which is basically what we're getting in this game, right? Or the GAC version. I would say that the Whalinator says quite clearly that if it's more than 3 teams versus 3 teams, then F2P is free-to-play is going to have a problem, simply because they don't have the character XP to actually take up their teams. So I guess it depends on when this is released, because it's 10 weeks per team. So
yeah. I mean, I think it's supposed to scale to your collection power. So when you start the game, and probably for some large amount of time after that, you're going to be playing with 1 or 2 teams. Probably they might start with 2, just because they do give you sort of a light and shadow squad that you need to kind of go through the campaigns. And then maybe once you hit some sort of collection power threshold, they're like, okay, now you can move up to 3 teams. And I think that'll take a little while for that to happen if you just started after they implement this multi-squad PvP mode. So you're not super interested in the PvP side of things. I'm very interested in the PvP side of things. I think this is one of the reasons I play this game. The way I kind of approach it is I am able to essentially make a puzzle for my opponent to try and solve. And I am trying to solve the defensive puzzle that my opponent has put down. And there's an endless amount of sort of effort and mind games you can sort of play in doing that sort of thing. It does get stale after a while, and it become cumbersome, which is what I'm worried about, that it's daily. So those are some things I'm thinking about. I'm very excited for it. I think this is also really good for just the game economy in general, because there won't be any more sort of shard. Nick refers to them as shard mafias, but there won't be any more shard collusion. There won't. It's going to move to a league system. People who have playing the game since day one, a lot of them people in my guild, but who don't spend money, are basically at the lower end of the shard one PvP, are going to be able to now kind of branch out, play with people who have similar collection powers. And I think that is a more exciting thing to do, because the way it's set up right now is essentially locks certain people out of playing essentially one of 3 of the game modes that are in the game at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I think I would also hope again that they sort of start making teams specifically for that game mode, because that also means to me that I could skip them. that is the other part, right? So we don't have to buy and build everything, right? That's actually why I prefer. That's also why I was so aggressive around Haradrim, right? Because they were marketed, at least in my mind, they were marketed specifically as a solution. They did not live up to that solution when I purchased them. That's why I was very negative on them. Whereas Gondor actually, I feel, were better in that sense, right? And thus, if they were to do the same with this, GAC version, then I would not have to worry about those teams, because unless they were also good at something else other than that specific mode, then why bother?
Yeah, it is annoying when you come up against a player who maybe isn't putting down like an intensive battle, or isn't. It becomes less about skill at that point when you have those types of teams, at least in my mind, and it comes just more about was I able to spend the money? And to me, that kind of diminishes the competitiveness of it. But I understand that they have to do some sort of monetization in that way. I just prefer to maybe, I'll cover my eyes and they can market it really hard as a specific, PvP type team. But as long as they don't say this has specific bonuses in this mode, then I think I'll be happy.
Yeah, in a sense, but I mean, we are already there, right?
Yeah.
Because we are in chart 1. So from our perspective, if we stopped spending for any reason, right, we would drop immediately. That is actually already happening in some cases, right? To your point, we wake up in Mithril 2 for some reason.
Yeah.
With all these, I see more and more free to play players actually push up into Mithril now in chart 1, simply due to the star change. So definitely, I think. I mean, I'm very happy that we can get rid of the shard mafia thing, right? Because to my mind, that has always been a sort of light cheating mode, right, or exploitation of the system at large. So I'm very happy we are moving away from that. But other than that, I mean, yeah, I'm no PvP hero, so to my mind, I would rather focus on the PvE stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's totally fine. I just like the decoupling, I think, into a league system. If I choose to not spend, then I don't think it will hurt me as much as if I choose to not spend right now, because if I choose to not spend right now, I know all the people in Shard 1 at the top, Mithril 2 and above, probably even in gold at this point, are spending. Whereas if I don't spend in a league type system, I'm probably playing against people who are at a similar spending to me, which means they also probably didn't spend at some point, or they spend differently, rather, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It will be interesting to see it roll out. At least I'm positive that they are doing it.
Yeah.
Definitely, I am. It sounds interesting enough, because at the end of the day, we have to understand that the question they are asking internally is what happens if a stockbroker from New York starts fighting with a guy from the Emirates, right? Who wins? Well, of course they do as the bank, right? Because that's where we start spending, right? Unfortunately, we are human beings, and the ego drives some of this as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Kind of as a last little segment that we're going to do this every episode moving forward. I believe we did it last episode, but what is one boon and one bane you have about the game right now?
So if we start on the positive thing, right, I would say communication right now is what I feel good about. This has improved massively. I acknowledge this fully. I'm happy to see that Heem is able to give us some of the answers we are asking for.
Yep.
Obviously, I would want more, right? As I said, mechanical stuff is because to me the mechanical stuff is actually helping them QA their product. Because if we've been trying to reverse engineer all the stuff for a while, right? Doing road memorization and observations, which is not. I mean, it's okay, but it's not a good way to actually do it. And if they just came out, have Nick had one of his combat port engineers get on our podcast with ourselves or Tauna or something and say, this is expected behavior. we would be able to help them QA their product a lot better, because that is actually also my bane. They need to focus a lot on the cleanup of bugs and freezes, and it needs to happen soon because there's so much frustration in the community around raids freezing, or Marquees not, like Gimli for instance, he's been bugged for what, 3 weeks now. I mean, and his passive basically does not work. I mean, that's just not good enough, unfortunately, right? So they need to do something there, and they need to do that faster than the case has been in the past.
Yeah. So, wow, we are 100% on the same page. My boon is also the increase in communication. I think it's been really, really stellar. It has gotten me excited about the game. The Discord has not been an eternal cycle of negativity. Actually, it's been fun to be in there in the official Discord. I've been enjoying that for some parts. Great, yeah. Kudos to them. Credit where credit is due. They've really, really increased their communication and done it effectively. And I hope that continues moving forward. I really like that they're trying to draw in these new players. I think that's why they gave that exclusive to All Things Middle Earth. He is originally a Rise to War YouTuber. I think that's what a lot of subscribers watch him for before he started to kind of branch out into this game. And, it was just kind of these efforts to reach out to a bunch of people, get the community involved as well. So big fan of that. Agree with you there. My bane is also the same as your bane. And the day that we're recording this, Saturday, I have a video going up talking about this specific thing. I think the biggest problem currently facing home in my mind is this soft lock issue. It seems to plague people in all of the game modes: arena, campaign, and raid. There are issues there. It's unclear to me, we figured out sometimes, right? Chapter 2 of the raid, you cannot use Nuraz's Troll Stonebreaker to stun the cave troll. That is causing a soft lock. But then there are other instances where it's like not so clear. We don't know if it's a mechanics thing. Okay, don't make sure the Aemer's summon is not alive when you end your arena battle, or make sure you aren't on auto, or something like that. But I think it could also just be device related. People's devices are reacting differently. I think this is something they have to solve. They have to get this right. And I hope that once they finish releasing Chapter 4 of the raid, they can dedicate some serious resources and time to solving these issues, because we see that they're trying to gain all of this new player base, which is good. We need that. I would love to have a bunch of new players join the game. But if they get soft locked pretty early on, I think that's a really big detriment. And I think it really hurt them at global launch. There was a tutorial bug that essentially soft locked you. There were actually, I think, multiple. And I think that absolutely just killed the willpower for a lot of people to continue playing the game. So we got to get that issue solved. I'm actually surprised both of ours were the same. I guess we have very similar opinions on a lot of things, and then just differ on the nuance for a lot of other things. But is there something that you wanted to kind of say to wrap this up? Is there something else that you wanted to mention?
I'm just thinking. So I think overall, from a community perspective, I actually think we're in a fairly good spot, right? I think the raids are coming out faster than I expected them to. It looks like the team is one sprint ahead, which I guess is like maybe 14 days or so. But to your point, right, they definitely need to do better jobs at QA and bug fixing. Obviously, from a community perspective, we would want to help them, and that's why I would ask for all the mechanical stuff, so we can see what actually works and what doesn't in practice. But yeah, because we didn't really talk about this, but r/fantasy, right? They have 3.4 million redditors there. So even if 5% of that community joins us, our numbers would basically double. So it is actually quite a big deal that they are going to r/fantasy for this, and I really do not want them to all these new players come in and get soft locked all the time, or crash as much as the client tends to do. So definitely I hope they will devote some time and resources to getting this fixed stat, because it's just not good enough.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. And I think you said it very well, so I'm not gonna add anything on top of that. With that, we thank you all for making it to the end of another very long episode. of Boons and Banes. We know you guys like watching these kind of over the course of days. If you have feedback, please let us know in the comments. Obviously, feel free to reach out to Torm or I if you have things that you want to talk about. And I'll just wrap up by saying another big shout out to Jay Randall on helping Torm do all of the stuff for the Whalinator spreadsheet. I think that's a very useful tool. If you think that would also be useful, you are, of course, welcome and free and encouraged to use that tool to your own benefit. But with that, I just want to thank you all again for watching and take it easy.